Hello! Today I'm going to be reading you Sleeping Beauty. The king and queen of a faraway country had everything they could possibly want. Servants, a palace, 2 crowns each, and thousands of loyal subjects who loved and respected them. There was only one thing missing in their lives: a son or a daughter to inherit their kingdom. "How I wish I had a child," sighed the queen one day as she walked alone in the royal gardens. Just then, a frog jumped out in her path, startling her. "Do not be sad," said the frog. "Before long you will have a child." And he was right. A year later, the queen gave birth to a baby girl with rosy cheeks and curly locks of hair. The king was overjoyed and ordered a great christening feast. He invited all the nobles of the land. He invited the fairies too, so they would present his daughter with magic gifts. "But we can't invite all 13 of them," said the queen. "We only have 12 golden dishes." "We'll have to leave one out then," said the king. Preparations for the feast began, and soon the day of the christening arrived. The guests showered the baby princess with gifts: golden lockets and diamond rings, clockwork, toys and picture books, even a treasure chest full of pearl necklaces. Then the 12 invited fairies formed a tight ring around her cradle. "I give you the gift of wisdom," said the first fairy, showering a scatter of golden leaves around the softly sleeping baby. "I give you beauty," cried the second fairy, waving her arms to fill the sky with shooting stars. "And I give you strength," said the third fairy. One by one, the other fairies stepped forward. "I give you confidence. I give you patience, friendliness, health, love, happiness, riches, kindness." Soon only the 12th fairy remained to present her gift. She was about to speak when there came a clap of thunder so loud that the very foundations of the palace shook and everyone trembled. Then the uninvited fairy flew into the room. She was dressed entirely in black. "Good evening, your majesties," she rasped in her deep, throaty voice. She leaned over the princess's cradle, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Please don't hurt her," begged the queen. "Hurt her?" cooed the wicked fairy. "Oh no, I've come to give the little princess a very special gift." "The princess has everything she needs already," said the king. The wicked fairy ignored him. "When the princess is 15 years old, she will prick her finger on a spindle and die." Everyone in the room gasped. The wicked fairy looked around her in triumph, then disappeared with another clap of thunder. The 12th fairy stepped forward. "Your Majesty," she said to the queen, "I still have to give the princess my gift." "Can you reverse the horrible curse?" asked the queen. "I'm afraid not," said the fairy. "My magic is simply not strong enough, but I can soften it. The princess will not die when she pricks her finger on a spindle. She will merely fall asleep for 100 years. The next day, the king ordered all the spinning wheels in the country to be burned. "Our daughter will never prick her finger on a spindle," he promised the queen. "She will never fall asleep for 100 years. Time passed and everyone forgot about the wicked fairy's curse. But the other fairies' gifts were fulfilled. The princess grew up to be a beautiful and kind girl. Everyone in the kingdom loved her. On the morning of her 15th birthday, while the king and queen were not at home, the princess amused herself by exploring the parts of the palace she had never been to before. Soon she came to a curious tower with a narrow staircase. At the top of the stairs was a door, and behind the door a dusty little room. The princess peeped in, trying to see beyond the cobwebs. "Hello, my dear." The princess jumped. There was an old lady sitting in the corner of the room. She was dressed entirely in black. "What are you doing?" asked the startled princess. "Spinning," said the old lady, twirling the wheel on a strange machine. "Have you never seen a spinning wheel before?" "No," said the princess, and she came closer to have a better look. The old woman smiled. "What's that?" asked the princess, pointing to a sharp stick bobbing and turning next to the wheel. "That's the spindle," said the old woman. "You can touch it if you like." The princess reached out and touched the spindle. "Ouch!" she cried as she pricked herself on the needle, and a drop of blood mushroomed on her finger. "Happy birthday!" cackled the old woman, who was of course the wicked fairy in disguise. The princess swayed and fell back on an old couch, at once lost in sleep. Almost instantly, everyone else in the palace fell asleep too. The king and queen, who had just come home, slumped back on their thrones. The cook, who was showing them the princess's birthday cake, dozed off with the cake in his hands. In the kitchen, the fire stopped roaring and the spit on which a goose was slowly turning came to a halt. Out in the stables, the horses and the stable boys yawned and fell down on the straw. The doves on the rafters tucked their heads under their wings. Even the spiders fell asleep in their cobwebs on the palace ceiling. All was still. Soon a thick hedge of thorny bushes grew around the palace, shutting it off from the world, hiding it from view. Years passed and the hedge grew into a forest. Many people tried to slash their way through it, hoping to find the palace and the princess rumoured to be sleeping within. But no one succeeded. The thorny trees kept everyone out. Then one day, a prince from a foreign country came by on his beautiful white charger. He'd heard an old storyteller tell of a beautiful princess who slept in the tower of a lonely palace, and he wondered if the legend were true. The old storyteller had mentioned enormous trees that tore at your clothes with nail-sharp thorns, but the prince saw nothing like that. The trees around him were covered in pink blossoms, not thorns. The 100 years were over, and the wicked fairy's curse was slowly beginning to fade. Soon the prince reached the palace. How silent and sad it was. All he could hear was the rustling of the wind as it blew long dead leaves around the courtyard. The guards were asleep at the gate, their helmets covered in a thick layer of dust. The prince left his horse outside and entered the palace. He saw the king and queen slumped on their thrones. He heard their gentle snoring as they slept. Where is the princess? He wondered. He began to explore the palace, stepping carefully over the sleeping people and animals. At last he found himself in a little tower room. There was a spinning wheel in the corner, and on the couch lay the princess, still as beautiful as the day she had fallen asleep. She looked so bewitching, so serene, the prince couldn't help himself. He bent down and kissed her on the lips. The princess stirred and opened her eyes. "You're here at last," she whispered. The prince looked so handsome and so strong that the princess couldn't help herself either. She fell in love with him straight away. "Have I been asleep for long?" she asked. 100 years, said the prince. "But now it's time for your life to begin again." He helped the princess to her feet, and they walked slowly down the narrow stairs, hand in hand. As they moved from room to room, the palace gradually came back to life. The spiders stirred on the palace ceiling, the doves in the rafters cooed and flapped their wings, and the horses and the stable boys rose to their feet. In the kitchen, the fire roared back to life and continued to cook the goose, while the spit started to turn round and round again. In the throne room, the cook jumped up with the birthday cake still in his hands. "Do your Majesties like the cake?" asked the cook, wondering why on earth the king and queen were yawning and stretching and rubbing the sleep out of their eyes. "We do indeed," said the queen, who had seen the handsome prince, leading the princess into the room. "But I think we shall need a wedding cake too." The prince and the princess were married right there and then, and lived happily and contentedly for the rest of their lives. The end. I hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you next time for another story. Bye! Sweet dreams!